There are 7 signs you're noticing what others can't. And Carl Jung discovered that this heightened perception isn't a gift, it's a warning. If you've ever walked into a room and immediately sensed tension no one else acknowledges, if you predict relationship conflicts days before they happen, if you can read people's real intentions beneath their words, you're experiencing what Jung called dangerous perception, and without proper integration, it leads to complete psychological breakdown. Jung identified 7 specific patterns that reveal this ability, why it overwhelms most people who have it, and the exact techniques he developed to transform it from a curse into strategic advantage. The first sign appears in situations where everyone else seems oblivious, and recognizing it changes everything. In 1913, Jung treated a patient, we'll call her Anna, who came to him after what she described as a nervous collapse. She'd been working as a governess for a wealthy family, and on the surface, everything seemed fine. But Anna told Jung something that immediately caught his attention. "I knew the marriage was ending 6 months before anyone else did. I could see the husband's resentment in how he held his fork at dinner. I could hear the wife's despair in the pauses between her words. But when I gently asked if everything was all right, they looked at me like I was insane." 3 months later, the husband had an affair. 2 months after that, divorce papers were filed. Everything Anna had sensed came true, but instead of feeling validated, she felt worse. "It's happening everywhere now," she told Jung. "I see my friend's business failing in the way he avoids certain topics. I see my sister's depression in how she arranges flowers. I see things others can't see, and it's driving me mad because I can't unsee them. This is what I call the perception crisis, when your ability to read patterns, emotions, and hidden dynamics becomes so overwhelming that it threatens your psychological stability." Jung recognized this immediately because he'd experienced it himself. During his own psychological crisis from 1913-1916, he became acutely aware of unconscious patterns in everyone around him. He could see people's shadows, their projections, their unacknowledged motivations. It was both illuminating and unbearable. He wrote in his journal, "To see clearly is to see too much. The unconscious reveals itself everywhere once you learn its language, and there is no returning to comfortable blindness." Modern neuroscience now explains what Jung observed clinically. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people shows that approximately 20% of the population has heightened sensory processing sensitivity. Their brains process information more deeply, notice subtler patterns, and make connections others miss. But here's what makes this ability dangerous. Brain imaging studies show that highly sensitive people have increased activity in regions associated with awareness and action planning. You're not just noticing more, your brain is constantly strategizing about what you notice, creating mental and emotional overload. Research reveals the darker side, heightened activation in pain-related brain regions when viewing others in distress. You don't just notice suffering, you neurologically experience it as your own. Jung understood this viscerally. Anna wasn't going crazy. Her perception was accurate. But accuracy without integration is torture. If you've ever felt like you see things others can't, and it's become overwhelming rather than empowering, comment, "I see too much." Because what feels like a curse is actually 7 specific perceptual abilities, and understanding which ones you have determines whether they destroy you or become your greatest strength. Jung identified 7 distinct ways this perception manifests. Most people with heightened sensitivity have 3 to 4 of these signs. If you recognize 5 or more, you need immediate integration techniques. Anna's first sign was what Jung called effective perception, the ability to sense emotional truth beneath social performance. You walk into a meeting and immediately know who's angry at whom, even though everyone is smiling. You can tell when someone's fine actually means they're falling apart. You sense relationship dynamics in the first 5 minutes of meeting a couple. This isn't intuition, it's pattern recognition happening faster than conscious thought. Friedrich Nietzsche demonstrated this exact ability. His letters reveal he could diagnose people's psychological states from brief interactions. He wrote about a colleague. He speaks of his happiness, but I see in his laugh the terror of a man who has lost meaning. Nietzsche was right. The colleague had a breakdown within months. But this constant perception of hidden suffering contributed to Nietzsche's own psychological crisis. He couldn't enjoy social interaction because he was always seeing beneath it. When integrated, this becomes invaluable for leadership, negotiation, therapy, or any field requiring human insight. You read rooms accurately, predict conflicts before they erupt, understand motivations others miss. Without integration, constant emotional bombardment with no filter, you absorb everyone's hidden pain until you can't distinguish theirs from yours. What Jung called synthetic perception, seeing where patterns are heading before others recognize the pattern exists. You know your friend's relationship is ending before they have their first fight. You sense a company is failing before the first layoffs. You predict people's choices months in advance because you see the trajectory they're on. Nikola Tesla exemplified this. He could visualize entire systems, electrical grids, wireless technology, renewable energy, decades before the technology existed to build them. He literally saw the future of technology in present moment patterns. But Tesla's perception isolated him completely. His notebooks reveal a man who saw tomorrow's world, while everyone else was satisfied with today. This made him a stranger in every room he entered. Research on pattern recognition shows that individuals with strong pattern detection often experience what researchers call existential isolation, feeling fundamentally alone because you see things others can't verify yet. When integrated, exceptional at strategic planning, trend analysis, risk assessment, and innovation. You position yourself ahead of curves others don't know exist. Without integration, chronic frustration. You warn people about what you see coming, they dismiss you. Then when it happens, they either don't remember your warning or resent you for being right. Authenticity detection. You can tell within minutes when someone is performing rather than being genuine. You feel physically uncomfortable around people who are on, even when everyone else is charmed. You sense when someone's spiritual practice is performance, when their confidence is compensation, when their kindness is manipulation. Jung himself had this ability intensely. After his break with Freud, he described being unable to attend professional gatherings because I could see everyone's persona so clearly that I forgot there were real people underneath. Every conversation felt like watching actors who'd forgotten they were in a play. This ability comes from what neuroscientists call incongruence detection. Your brain notices micro-expressions, vocal patterns, and behavioral inconsistencies that don't match someone's stated emotional state. Research on micro-expressions shows that most people can't consciously detect these 1/25th of a second emotional leaks. But people with heightened perception notice them automatically, creating a constant sense that something's off. Integrated, invaluable for vetting people, detecting deception, identifying genuine versus performative behavior in any context from hiring to dating. Unintegrated, you become unable to accept anyone at face value. Every interaction feels like peeling back layers of performance. You develop cynicism that destroys your capacity for connection. 4 more signs reveal the depth of your perception. Environmental absorption. You walk into a space and immediately feel its emotional residue. You enter a home and know a fight happened there recently. You sit in someone's office and feel their anxiety soaked into the walls. This isn't mystical. It's unconscious processing of thousands of environmental cues. Omission detection, U. Notice what people don't say. In conversations, you hear the gaps, silences, and avoided topics that reveal hidden truth. When someone describes their marriage but never mentions feeling loved, you notice. The silences tell you more than the words. Probabilistic thinking. You don't just see what's happening, you see multiple paths forward and their likely outcomes. Someone tells you their plan, and you immediately see 3 ways it could fail and 2 ways it could succeed. This is what Jung meant by prospective thinking, the psyche's ability to project forward based on current patterns. Somatic empathy. Others' emotional states create physical responses in your body. Someone near you is anxious, and your chest tightens. Someone's depressed, and heaviness settles in your body. Mirror neuron research shows this is measurable. When highly empathic people observe others' emotions, their brains don't just recognize those emotions, they reproduce them. If you recognize 5 or more of these combined signs, you're experiencing the full spectrum of what Jung documented. If you have 5 or more of these signs, comment, "I have dangerous perception," because recognizing you have this ability is just the first step. Most people with heightened perception make one critical error that leads to breakdown rather than integration. Over the next 3 months, Anna's crisis deepened, and Jung observed a pattern he'd seen in other patients with heightened perception. Anna's path followed a predictable progression. First, she felt validated, finally an explanation for why she'd always felt different. But validation quickly turned to inflation. She began seeing her perception as evidence of superiority. I see truth others can't handle. This led to isolation. She couldn't find others who operated at her perceptual level. Normal. Conversation felt unbearable. She withdrew, believing others wouldn't understand. Then came overwhelm. Without proper filters, perception became noise. She was drowning in information, everyone's hidden emotions, unconscious patterns, future trajectories, environmental energies. It was too much data with no processing system. Finally, her nervous system couldn't handle the load. She developed severe anxiety, couldn't leave her room, and became terrified that going outside would expose her to more perception she couldn't process. Jung himself nearly reached this point during his crisis. He wrote, "I stood at the edge of madness, seeing so clearly into the unconscious that I feared I would fall in and never return." But Jung didn't break down completely. He developed integration techniques, and when he taught them to Anna, her life transformed. Because heightened perception isolates you, therefore Jung developed specific integration techniques that transform it from curse to strategic advantage. Jung's 4-step integration process turns overwhelming perception into conscious tool. The first technique. Your perception is something you have, not something you are. This distinction is critical. When you identify as the one who sees, your ego becomes invested in maintaining that role. You can't turn it off, because turning it off feels like losing yourself. The differentiation practice. Daily, spend 10 minutes in directed imagination. Visualize your perception as a tool you can pick up and put down. Practice mentally closing your perceptual channels for brief periods. Recognize, I am having perceptions, not I am my perceptions. Over her first month of work with Jung, Anna learned to create what he called psychic distance from her ability. She could still perceive patterns, but she wasn't consumed by them. Without filters, heightened. Perception becomes dangerous noise. Anna learned to ask 3 questions about every perception. Is this information actionable for me right now? Does processing this serve my well-being or deplete it? Is this my responsibility to address or someone else's to discover? If the answer to all 3 is no, practice releasing the perception rather than processing it. This isn't denial, it's conscious selection. You can notice that your colleague is hiding anxiety without making their anxiety your project. You can sense that a relationship is ending without inserting yourself into their process. Jung himself used this technique after his crisis. He maintained his perceptual abilities, but became highly selective about what he processed. He could attend social gatherings without being overwhelmed because he'd stopped processing information that wasn't relevant to him. By month 6, Anna had learned differentiation and filtration. Jung added 2 more elements. She needed outlets for expression. Unexpressed perception accumulates in the psyche like pressure in a closed system. Anna began private journaling of perceptions without judgment, painting what she saw that others couldn't, and selective sharing with Jung and one trusted friend who could hold the information. And she needed to practice strategic application, learning to activate perception deliberately rather than having it run constantly. Jung taught Anna what I call perceptual gears. Gear 1, baseline awareness, normal social functioning, perception at minimum. Gear 2, engaged perception, actively noticing patterns when relevant. Gear 3, deep analysis, full perceptual capacity for specific situations. Gear 4, integration mode, processing what you've perceived. Anna learned she could attend a party in Gear 1, have a business meeting in Gear 2, do deep work with Jung in Gear 3, then spend evening in Gear 4, integrating. This conscious control transformed her experience completely. After 6 months of integration work, Anna took a position as a consultant for a family-owned business that was struggling. Within 2 weeks, she'd identified 3 hidden conflicts destroying company culture, predicted which employees were about to quit, and sensed that the CEO's son, who everyone praised, was embezzling funds. She presented her findings carefully, with evidence to support her perceptions. The company investigated. Everything she'd sensed was accurate. They promoted her to a senior advisory position. Her heightened perception, once a curse, had become invaluable strategic advantage. If you're ready to integrate your perception instead of being overwhelmed by it, comment, "I choose integration." But integration requires one final element that most people with heightened perception struggle to create. You cannot maintain integrated perception in isolation. You need what Jung called the community of seers, others who perceive as you do. The challenge, finding these people without revealing your perceptual vulnerability to those who can't understand it. Jung's technique for finding your people. Signal 1. Observe who notices the subtleties. In any group, watch who comments on things others miss, who notices mood shifts, who senses tension, who picks up on what's not being said. These are your potential people. Signal 2. Test with small revelations. Share a minor perception and watch the response. If they dismiss or pathologize it, you're overthinking. They're not your people. If they validate or build on it, yes, and did you notice? Continue exploring. Signal 3. Look for historical indicators. People with heightened perception often share certain experiences: childhood sensitivity, feeling different, being called too much or too intense, interest in psychology, philosophy, or pattern-based fields. Where to find perceptual community: depth psychology circles, Jungian analysis groups, highly sensitive person communities, professional fields requiring pattern recognition, design, strategy, therapy, philosophical discussion groups, creative communities, writers, artists who work with archetypal material. Within 3 months of beginning integration work, Anna found her community through a Jungian study group. She connected with 4 people who perceived as she did. Their monthly gatherings became essential for her continued integration. The practice of reciprocal perception. When you find your people, practice what Jung called mutual witness, taking turns perceiving for each other. One session, Anna would share what she was perceiving about a situation. The group would offer their perceptions, compare notes, help her filter signal from noise. Next session, Anna would witness while another member shared their perceptions. This reciprocal process does something isolation cannot. It helps you calibrate your perception against others' input, preventing both inflation, I'm the only one who sees, and doubt, maybe I'm imagining things. The integration milestone. You know you've successfully integrated heightened perception when you can turn it on and off consciously. You use it strategically rather than being overwhelmed by it. You found community that validates and challenges your perceptions. Your perception serves your life rather than consuming it. You can be in social situations without constant overwhelm. A year after beginning integration work, Anna described her life to Jung. I still see what others can't, but now I choose when to look. I have people I can discuss what I see with, who understand without thinking, I'm crazy. I use my perception professionally, and it's valued rather than pathologized. Most importantly, I can turn it off and simply enjoy a sunset without analyzing the emotional architecture of the clouds. Jung smiled. You've discovered what I spent years learning. Dangerous perception is only dangerous when it's unconscious. Made conscious and integrated, it becomes one of the most valuable capacities a human can develop. The final integration. Heightened perception isn't a curse disguised as a gift. It's a capacity that becomes curse or gift, depending on how you relate to it. Unconscious and unintegrated, it leads to overwhelm, isolation, and breakdown. Conscious and integrated, it becomes strategic advantage, making you exceptional at reading people, predicting patterns, detecting truth beneath performance, navigating complexity others can't see. The 7 signs don't mean something's wrong with you. They mean you're operating with perceptual capacities most people don't have. Your job isn't to suppress these capacities or wish them away. Your job is to integrate them so they serve your life rather than consuming it. You're not noticing too much. You're noticing accurately, but without the proper tools to process what you notice. Jung spent his life developing those tools, and they work. Your perception can become your greatest strength, but only if you choose integration over isolation, conscious application over constant overwhelm, and community over solitary suffering. The question isn't whether you have heightened perception. The question is, will you integrate it? Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.